Thank you, thank you, thank you, Dr. The right one, excellent, Sir Kennedy Simmons. I am indeed grateful, and I'm sure everyone is, for the history you shared with us today. And for me, it was a special honor to look at you and to hear what you had to say. I haven't seen you in a very long time, and to see you so strong and delivering so ably is really made me smile this afternoon. So thank you ever so much. I really enjoyed listening to you. Thank you. I now call on Mr. Kirji Stevens, the president of the Students' Government, to share with us an introduction of our keynote speaker this evening.
Good evening, everyone. Please allow me to adopt the protocol that was so ably established. Dr. Tamu Petra Brown is the founder of an online academy, Innovative Education and Training Solutions and Coaching by Tamu. The former serves adult Caribbean learners whose traditional education pathway was interrupted. Coaching by Tamu is the entrepreneurship education component of Tamu's ventures focused on guiding female entrepreneurs to create and effectively manage scalable and innovative ventures. Her teaching and learning philosophy sits at the intersection of technology and innovation. Petra, as she is known to her peers, is passionate about incorporating technology into the teaching and learning experiences while using pedagogical techniques to encourage curiosity and novel thought. Dr. Brown served as convener for the Caribbean Examination Council's Animation and Game Design syllabus, leading a regional team to create an advanced level curriculum available to all English-speaking Caribbean schools. Coaching by Tamu is the entrepreneurship education component of Tamu's ventures, focused on guiding Caribbean female entrepreneurs to create and effectively manage high-growth, scalable, and innovative ventures. Her Mentor to Millions initiative uses action research to leverage and to lead at least 10 Caribbean women to $1 million in revenue. Dr. Brown has provided her services to regional and international entities, including the World Bank's Pitch IT Caribbean Program, Caribbean Export Development Agency, UE and UNDP, and St. Kitts and Nevis's Citizenship by Investment Funded Seed Initiative, where she served as the bootcamp manager for the multi-million-dollar initiative for the final 2 cycle. Her ventures have allowed her to positively impact the lives and livelihoods of schools in the region. Tamu received her doctorate in 2018 in technology entrepreneurship, having researched strategies that minority female founders use to receive venture capital funding for technology companies. Tamu holds a master's in information systems management, a bachelor's in management studies, a postgraduate diploma in teaching, numerous education-related certificates, and in 2020, a certificate in innovation from Universidad del Desarrollo in Chile. After a 4-stage competitive process, Tamu has also recently been appointed to the Global Advisory Board of Teachers Without Borders. Dr. Brown enjoys writing and researching for her edification. Without further ado, let us give a warm welcome to Dr. Petra Brown.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Sage, can you tell me where am I to look for my virtual audience as well so we can keep them engaged? Straight ahead? I know, but camera? Okay. Well, first I'd like to adopt the protocol so ably established. And I'd like to beg your grace because it is no easy feat speaking after a living legend an excellent orator, and so I beg your grace, okay? So we begin. Are we ready? Yes? We're engaged? That's the teacher in me. So, discourse on national development in the absence of a conversation and strategic planning predicated on a fit-for-purpose, evidence-based, agile, and inventive education ecosystem is imprudent. I thank the leadership of the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College for selecting me to deliver this address. As a former faculty member, I am thrilled to continue to contribute in this manner. Thank you, Dr. Austin and Ms. Daniel, for inviting me home. So now to the examination of the topic of diversification in education, a pathway to national development. I opine on this topic all the time with colleagues in the field, friends, and anyone who would provide me an ear. So I am beyond eager to present on the subject in public. I am an educator, so of course, I intend to provide the contextual foundation upon which the conversation can be scaffolded. We must explore what national development means and then contemplate the elusive phraseology of diversification in education. I will begin with one of the texts written by Sir Arthur Lewis, one of the region's Nobel laureates and a pioneer of development economics, through the lens of small island states and the complexities of race and ethnicity. I use Lewis's text, The Theory of Economic Growth, as definition bedrock, not because I am naive to the fact that national development is not synonymous with economic growth, but because they are conjoined twins. The World Development Report 1999-2000, which reflected on the key lessons that have emerged from 50 years of development experience, stated that Lewis's classic 1955 study, The Theory of Economic Growth, explores the complexity of the development process. Although Lewis famously touted a model of shifting labor and industrialization as tenets of economic growth, this text, The Theory of Economic Growth, is more holistic in its embrace of the social factors that affect national development, steering away from the strictly economic bent for which he is known. There is a natural tendency to assume, Lewis opined, that things which are associated in the society we know must necessarily also be associated in all other societies. Lewis argued that national architects needed to be careful of the assumption that methods that worked in relation to the societies mainly in the European spheres, which had been successful in the past, were the only methods that could work or would work in the same way in tropical economies. In his 2005 publication, titled W. Arthur Lewis's Social Analysis and the Transformation of Tropical Economies, Mark Figueroa noted that in The Theory of Economic Growth, Lewis's chief questions were related to what he saw as the proximate causes of growth. Lewis was interested in knowing about societies that promoted the will to economize and develop appropriate institutions that fostered economic growth. In particular, he was interested in those social arrangements that enabled the development of knowledge and its application to the expansion of production, elicited savings, and applied them to the accumulation of capital, which led to migrations and rates of population growth favorable to economic expansion. Lewis also paid particular attention to the governmental institutions produced by different societies. Given the importance that Lewis attached to governmental decisions' impact on the economy, and was concerned with those social elements that were consistent with economic growth. Still, he was ultimately more concerned about what allowed a society to move onto a high growth path. He wrote, "Growth may accelerate either because new opportunities come into existence, or because institutional changes now permit opportunities to be seized which already existed, or for both reasons." Lewis also stated in his 1955 text, "It may not be those at the top of the social structure who initiate change. Neither is it those who are at the bottom. It is the new men who play the most prominent part in effecting change. They come from intermediate social classes, probably near enough at the top to have some resources, some personal freedom, and some tradition of action." Those quotes come from pages 147 to 149 of the text. He closes, "It is possible for a nation to take a new turn if it is fortunate enough to have the right leadership at the right time." Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, announced, "The world economy needs a new development paradigm for the 21st century." This was September 20th, 2019, speaking at the Global Partnerships for Climate Action at the State University of New York and UE Center. Beckles explains, and I'm quoting, "We are at the tail end of the 19th century development paradigm that was based on economic growth by all means necessary, including colonial exploitation, white supremacy, destruction of rainforests, financial institutions catering for elites, and disrespect for the environment and the poor. We all want inclusive development that is sustainable." He practically begged that learning institutions should never again support developing away years of progress with a skewed return to prosperity, unsurprisingly, by the developed countries. A synthesis of Dr. Ngozi's remarks tells us that national development cannot be gauged by the sole key performance indicator of economic growth. My economic training tells me that is a lagging indicator, and that as opportunities await, we need to seek the lead indicator. I submit that the lead indicator is education. Now, let us shift our critical gaze to the oft-repeated phrase, diversification in education, emblazoned everywhere in these times of the new normal. Another emblazoned phrase, right? So this concept of diversification in education has come into the social consciousness and education industry nomenclature. A search in the scholarly database for the term diversification in education yielded 17,100 studies published in just 2021. And on the topic, diversification in education and COVID-19 yielded 7,480 published studies for the same period. Suppose if even 40% of the results are directly relevant to our topic. In that case, it is indisputable that there is a hunger in the research community to find answers, which is the purpose of research. Let me hold my gaze steady here a while and question, what are our research findings on this scholarly topic in this scholarly community? Are we hoping to extrapolate the findings of studies on diverse populations to our very distinct population? I too am under my own gaze. I believe this is an excellent place to begin our exploration of diversification in education, a recognition that any diversification should be data-driven. But where is the data? Where is the data for our region, for our country, and for our communities? We will revisit this point. Make a note, hold me accountable. Let us keep the same pattern and define this term from the micro to the macro perspective, from the curriculum to the sector to the industry. Nigerian scholar Grace Oformo, in her 2010 work, defines curriculum diversity as the various means, content, method, resources, evaluation procedures included in the school program to produce functioning members of society. Not too exciting a definition. Where it becomes interesting is her assertion that curriculum diversification was a tool for social re-engineering. Re-engineering may sound dystopian, but education's ultimate purpose is to create learners whose outputs and contributions lend to the development of our most aspirational society. And it must be undertaken with thoughtfulness and strategic intent if it is to align with national development. Education as a social re-engineering tool and the re-education phrase is often associated with non-democratic governments, the Soviet Union, Hitler's Germany, and China, to achieve their goals of national supremacy. Despite this being the case, social re-engineering through education is not necessarily sinister, and leaders commonly use the practice to achieve their national performance indicators. Closer to home, Maurice Bishop's quest to re-engineer the Grenadian society was heavily dependent on education reform, mass literacy campaigns, and universal education. He almost succeeded. That's another lecture. A 2017 article on the World Bank's blog highlights 5 education reforms that have resulted in positive economic growth for implementing nations. The author uses learner outcomes as a proxy or as a lead indicator for economic development. Remember we had this discussion about lead and lagging? So, I outline a few. Poland delayed the tracking of learner outcomes in their systems and improved the quality of their teachers. Vietnam's education leaders focused on primary level reform, which resulted in their students' exceptional ability to apply basic mathematical skills to complex real-world problems. That is a significant skill, I would add. In Mexico, this one is interesting. The World Bank funded parent associations. The project provided training for parent advocacy to support school improvements. The interventions resulted in fewer grade repetitions, fewer failures, and fewer dropouts. These examples are models for the 360-degree view required for education diversification, from the curriculum to teacher inputs to households, from curriculum to system to nation. These examples illustrate diverse interventions based on societal needs, recognizing the role that education plays in national development driven by data. These are action research-based interventions. On August 16, 2021, Singapore's Minister of Education, Mr. Singh, at a forum for public officers remarked, "We must build diversity in our schools. In an uncertain world, diversity is key to our resilience as a country. In a hyper-competitive world, diversity is also key to alleviating the unhealthy stress of pursuing the same definition of success. We will provide our students with a diversity of schools and education pathways, a diversity of skill sets, and a diversity of perspectives and experiences. What ultimately matters is not how much our students know, but how fast they learn and how able they are to adapt to an ever-changing environment. If survival is a contest of evolution, then the best help that we can give them is the widest exposure possible to different experiences, challenges, and circumstances." I close Mr. Singh's quote. So now, for an unwavering gaze at diversification in education, a pathway to national development, I am intertwined in this topic. It sits in my core. Why? I am a teacher. I am a mother, a scholar practitioner, and of course, a member of society. I am a champion of education at the intersection of entrepreneurial mindsets, invention, creation and not consumption, and intellectual curiosity from all those involved in the teaching and learning process. I even think the phrase teaching and learning is incomplete and inadequate for the world that we uncomfortably now navigate. Instead, I advocate to learn, innovate, teach, and repeat. A never-ending cycle of new assumptions tested, perhaps modified, understood, and disseminated and applied. Anything short of that stymies any meaningful education that can contribute to national development. I have always known this. Many of my colleagues in the field have known this, but now we all know it because of our experiences managing COVID. The constant shift understanding that learning and knowledge evolve. The constant evaluation and the embrace of situational fluidity should be applied as well to education. The dogged pursuit of the past is a time waster. Instead, there should be a dogged pursuit of research, a dogged pursuit of introspective and futuristic strategy, a dogged pursuit of heterogeneous and practical implementation based on school, community, and societal needs. At this point in our development, the nation is the most demographically diverse that it has ever been. Yet, as a region, we pursue education homogeneity. A diverse system for diverse learners, for diverse and complex challenges is what we require. The nation will only face more complexity as we traverse through these new times. Who will help us? It is imperative that you note that none of the discourse thus far has centered on technology, although technology has its place. We are often myopic in our view that diversification in education is synonymous with instructional technology. Technology is a tool, it is not education. It can facilitate education, but it must be wielded in the fight to keep our learners from regressing during the pandemic. Much has been written about the loss of student gains, particularly in the developing world, so I need not repeat the conversation. Instead, I seek to add two new perspectives to the dialogue. One, I boldly state, it is because we strive to force the unwilling old into the petulant new that learners continue to lose. The lack of inventiveness is the culprit. So, it is evident that technology has a role in these times as we move to blended or entirely virtual learning to create the required physical and social distancing. It is the sustainable implementation that continues to challenge us. Why not blended learning with kinesthetic kits for younger students? Why not parent-teacher association assistance groups for virtual tutoring? Why not pods of learners in different virtual and physical spaces, keeping numbers small but learning varied? These are just a few of my thoughts, but where are the novel ideas and experimentation required in these times? Just as the nation's response to COVID is an all-of-society approach, the nation's response to education diversification needs to align with that call, as it is all of us who rely on education to craft and thrive in the type of society we want to live in. Second perspective. In 2020, in the throes of the pandemic, I delivered a brief session at the Caribbean Development Bank's Digital Dialogue Resilience Series on digital transformation and TVET skills-based training. At that time, I presented a model that I have created that I think illustrates why I believe we are faltering in the Caribbean region to transform and diversify our education ecosystem. I use the term ecosystem deliberately. My digital transformation model places the much documented and discussed technology resources on the perimeter. So we have infrastructure, we have online infrastructure bolstered by blockchain. I have on there extended reality. I have education training. But on the core, I present the true elements of digital transformation: design thinking, innovation, learner equity. Well, the traditional resources are there because I agree that they are essential and deserve a place in digital transformation. But at the core of the model are the resources we give scant regard to and see a dearth of evidence of in our regional educational ecosystem. We constantly, at all levels, make decisions that are not grounded in data. Why? Because perhaps we are not mining the data, or let me step back. In many cases, we are not collecting the data, at least not often the data that matters. We are not applying transformational and innovative thinking to the information we do have, nor are we engaging in design thinking. We are not engaging our households, children, learners, societies, or trading partners. We are siloed. Learner equity, in my mind, goes well beyond access. It speaks to abilities through the entire learning bell curve. It speaks to educator competence and their ability to transform the old into the new and novel effectively, and so much more that we have no time for. We can have all the access, all the tech, all the teacher training, but if we are not engaging in digital transformation based on the way that we think and strategically plan, or education diversification, then we are simply implementing digital tools. Y'all with me? Okay, good. I think it is time to close the discourse, to shift our gaze to the horizon. Educators shape communities. Educators shape nations. Educators are leaders, and a nation's leaders must shape an education paradigm that will pivot society and sustain national development. I spoke earlier of an education ecosystem because education is much more than the classroom or industry context. When considering the effect of education on national development, these non-traditional forms of education and education partners must be included in the discourse, the data collection, and the development agenda. The subject matter expert is no longer just the degreed individual. It is the content creator, the entrepreneur, the self-taught data analyst, the team member at extended reality companies. They are the new subject matter experts. The artists, the historian, the elder. Where are their roles? Where is their voice? Where are the education leaders championing socio-cultural, contextually relevant, yet globally adaptable content? We can all be creators and not solely consumers of American visuals, trauma, and curated content. Where are the patents, the papers, the accelerator labs and incubators? Where are the inventors? Where is the ecosystem? Who will shape the education ecosystem so that our nation shifts to transform itself into the first of the Caribbean's version of the Asian tigers? We all will have to, if we intend to ratchet up our nation's development. Thank you for having me.